In Valkenheim, the Valkyrie warriors are a group of warrior women who have made a pact with the gods. They will fight and kill in battle to earn favor for those unable to do so themselves, earning a place in Valhalla for the citizens of Valkenheim who cannot fight for themselves or earn that seat of their own accord. For whom these women fight is theirs to decide, but who they fight and why, sometimes that is a much harder choice to make. Ingrid Månefødt was only 18 when she had decided to join the Valkyrie. It was a decision that both brought pride and fear to her family, but it was always the only choice for her. Her father was a simple fisherman, and his wife his assistant. Her two brothers were not warriors. One was a blacksmith, and the other worked on the docks. Since none were warriors, none would see Valhalla. Though her father said he didn't mind this, Ingrid did. She loved her family deeply. The smiles on their faces and the warmth she felt around them was her driving motivator. She wanted the best for them, and she would fight for it. She knew who she would fight to gain glory for. She left to begin her initiation. For the first 2 years of her service, she was trained and conditioned to learn the secrets of their clans. A Valkyrie was more than a fighter. They were trackers, scouts, and defenders. She learned to trace footsteps, to recognize trails where none could, and to spot prey from kilometers away, if necessary. It was bitter and arduous work. When she was finally finished with her training, she learned how the Valkyrie fought their battles. Oftentimes, a Valkyrie or two were sent with a raiding group or war party to fight alongside them and act as their scouts and shield sisters. This way, a Valkyrie didn't always have to fight on their own, and if they did, at the very least they could avenge the fallen comrades they failed to protect. Ingrid was paired with a small band called the Wolffang clan. They were a motley crew, led by a raider named Henrik, who was incredibly popular for his warrior skill and spirit, and also because he was one of the most attractive raiders in the hold of Agder. She'd gone with him on 4 different campaigns against the Knights of Ashfeld, and at least 2 into the mire to steal plunder and loot. But Ingrid always looked back on the fights with a feeling of disappointment. It was not for lack of thrill or challenge, but rather lack of purpose. She felt overall lacking, as if her feats in the battle were meaningless. Did these fights really bring her family honor? Did they bring her honor? Did they really help give her brothers, father, and mother entry to Odin's Hall? What was she obtaining from these?
"Why so grim, little bird?"
Henrik would laugh when a battle was through and he would catch Ingrid looking off into the distance.
"It's another victory for the Wolffang clan."
"Oh yes, Henrik," she would laugh back, trying to hide her grievances. "I suppose killing weak swamp dwellers and walking tin cans is just beneath the honors I'd hoped for."
Henrik laughed louder. "Aha, too true. And yet, combined, they are a rather annoying group of foes, are they not? Wulin, samurai, knight, and now even more foes from beyond our borders. Seems we will never truly be rid of these barbarians. So rest assured, you will find your worthy foe."
Henrik clapped her back, and then returned to his soldiers to begin gathering the plunder, leaving the confused and concerned Valkyrie alone, wondering if she was happy or sad at that fact. A year later, Bolthorn had returned to Valkenheim, and with that wretched bracelet, cursing all of Heathmoor with its terrible plagues. Only after the Magi had arrived and taken back the bracelet did the curse finally lift. But with the lifting of the curse came even fiercer fighting. The Magi had not left to go back to Egypt, and they had begun setting up camps and strongholds around the continent, including Valkenheim. The Wolffang clan was eager to take the fight to the foreigners, but Henrik disagreed.
"Our enemies are the knights and the samurai," he would remind them. "We do not know these barbarians from beyond our lands. They are strange to us, and they possess strange magics. Bolthorn dared to oppose them and see how he fared. No, we must keep to the villages and towns of the Mire and Ashfeld as our targets. Ignore the foreigners."
No one argued, but it was clear that the arrival of the Magi and the curse the scarab bracelet had caused had shaken Henrik. His confidence in the strength of the Vikings had been shaken. Ingrid tried to approach him about it, but he turned her away with a nervous smile.
"Fear not for me, little bird," he would chuckle. "So long as we stay away from those cursed savages, the happier I'll be. Let's just stick to what we know and the enemies we're familiar with."
Ingrid worried for Henrik, but did as she was told. After all, she still hadn't found the answers yet to what she sought. She wanted to feel accomplished. But looting towns and villages, fighting knights and samurai, none of it felt like she'd done anything important enough to earn salvation for her family or honor for herself. On one cold morning, the Wolfang clan raided an Ashfeld village to find no knights in it at all, only civilians. After killing a few at the start, the clan stopped fighting, confused. Where were the knights? Ingrid walked among the people who were cowering and hiding desperately. "Why have we attacked here, Henrik?" she asked him when he approached.
"It must have been a mistake," he had said, shaken, his face pale. "Sorry, I was certain this place would have a knight protecting it, or something. Everyone just tie up the civilians and leave them here. Take some provisions and let's return to Valkenheim at once." Now everyone was concerned for Henrik. It wasn't like him to be so jumpy or scared. He didn't make mistakes like this, and he never purposefully singled out unprotected towns. After all, there was no honor in killing civilians. Ingrid was full of worry. She had no answers. Henrik had returned to Agder to speak with the Jarl again, and she couldn't sleep. She gazed up at the moon quietly, seeking something. She didn't know what, but anything to alleviate her fears. And nothing came. Something felt too wrong to her. Incredibly wrong. Things just didn't add up. Desperate for something to do, Ingrid left her post and wandered to the village they had raided earlier. But upon arriving, she was met with a haunting sensation, and she realized why. "Where is everyone?" she asked. No life was there. None of the civilians that they had tied up were still there. No knights were here to relieve them. No buzzards or scavengers to feed on dead bodies. There weren't even corpses. Everyone was gone. Just gone. She wandered about the town in both horror and curiosity. It made no sense. How could a whole town just vanish like this? Where were the citizens? Then she heard it. The movement of large feet. She jumped out of the way just in time for a figure to crash towards her from behind a wall, and her eyes widened with shock and fear. The man before her was tall, muscular, and powerful. He wore a breastplate and a cloth around his waist. His skin was ebony, and his body adorned with the pelt of a crocodile. In his hands was a large staff with two fan-shaped blades on their side. The Magi. Ingrid took her stance. Was it the Magi and their sorcery that had done this? She'd know soon enough. She attacked with intense fury, and the Magi responded in kind. Her shield met his blows, and she tried to rip her spear into his body, but the mighty warrior dove out of reach and would spin past her blows. However, she didn't relent in her defenses. She was swift to bring her shield to bear to block his hacking slashes. She let out a grunt of pain as the warrior slammed his shoulder into her, knocking her backwards. He raised his axe to strike true, but Ingrid was prepared, striking up with her shield. She countered the attack, and then drove her spear into his hip. The Magi growled with anger, and then jumped clear of her, ready for another attack. "Enough! Stop this!" To Ingrid's surprise, a warden came running from the farther side of the rubble, putting herself between the two combatants. "This isn't getting us anywhere, Temwah!" Ingrid did not lower her stance, nor did she let down her spear. A warden and a Magi? Were the knights and foreigners working together? The warden turned to Ingrid and held up her hand. "We have no quarrel with you, Valkyrie. We are here seeking answers." Ingrid paused. Answers? That was exactly what she wanted. "What kind of answers?" she demanded. "Let us first introduce ourselves," the warden offered. "This is Temwah, a Magi who has broken from his leader and king." "A false king," Temwah grumbled.
"And I am Ruth, a knight of Ashfeld." Ruth and Temwah stared at Ingrid as if expecting her to respond in kind. Ingrid wasn't so foolish as to expose herself so lightly to the enemy, so she just shrugged. "Am I to care about this?"
"A foul disposition, this one," Temwah grumbled. "All these savages are the same, just like Bolthorn. They have no semblance of manners, courtesy, or honor."
"That's rich coming from a desert-dwelling animal like you," Ingrid hissed furiously. "You know what your curse did to our home?"
"There would have been no curse had your kind left the bracelet alone."
"Stop it!" Ruth snapped, pushing the two apart. "This is pointless. We're not here to fight. We're trying to uncover what happened to the townsfolk here." Ingrid this time did take an interest. "I was wondering about that myself," she admitted. "My clan came here under orders. We thought it was a defended town with stores of plunder, but when we got here we saw no knights or defenders. Just scared civilians. We tied them up but didn't do anything more. There's no honor in killing innocents.
Then perhaps you have some honor, even if of the most basic, Temwah grumbled.
Easy, Ruth warned. So you were here then? You saw the people? Without a doubt. But I don't know where they went, Ingrid answered. Then we could use your assistance, Valkyrie. As a tracker, surely you could help us hunt down the kidnappers. Help us find where the civilians went. Ingrid was stunned by the offer. A knight, requesting aid from a Viking? It wasn't unheard of, but to do so willingly, without pause? You're a knight. These are your people, so I get your concern. But what is he doing here? She indicated Temwah. Why does he care? Temwah and I met after I found him wandering aimlessly in Ashfeld seeking direction. I vouch for his character, and he's currently assisting me in my day-to-day duties.
At least until I find what I seek. It's a suitable arrangement, Temwah explained.
And what is it you're seeking? Ingrid asked questioningly.
It's not a story for you. Yet.
We can talk about this later. Will you help us? Ruth asked. Ingrid stared at the two a long moment and weighed her options. They were both her enemies, and she'd lost count of the knights she'd fought and bested in combat. And as for the Magi, she'd never fought one, but after what Neferka and his ilk had done with their wretched curse, how could she possibly trust this one? And yet she still felt a stirring in her breast. So long now had she been looking for direction, a goal, a purpose or desire, fighting against knights and samurai hadn't given it, but perhaps this might yield more results. She felt a desire to seek these people, to walk with them and to find the missing townsfolk. The worst that could happen is these two turn on her, in which case she could fight valiantly to the bitter end. But Ruth seemed trustworthy at least, though she wasn't sure about Temwah. She glanced around in the night and walked along the grounds. She moved towards the area they'd left the town tied up. She knelt down and skimmed the clay and mud for footprints, but saw nothing. Hoofprints, yes, but those could have been left by any horse or donkey. She paused, though, as she approached the town western gate, leading towards the hills nearby. She stooped down and felt the ground with her hand. Wagon trail, she whispered. Fresh. It rolled through around a few hours ago. Ruth and Temwah approached and glanced down at it, barely able to notice. Can you track it? Yes, she said, taking off into the night with her comrades behind her. They must have been a strange sight running together through the night, but it also felt unmistakably entertaining to Ingrid. This felt different. It wasn't just another battle or war to wage. It was an adventure, something that felt far more fulfilling. The trail came to an end in front of a cave leading to the depths of the hills. Temwah didn't hesitate to walk inside, with Ruth and Ingrid following close behind him. At first, the cave was pitch black, but with each step there seemed to be a faint glow along the walls of the cave.
Do these caves have a purpose? Temwah asked.
Our people used to mine in these hills, Ruth answered, but after Valkenheim started their invasion, it's been hard to do so peacefully.
Their questions were halted by a sound of voices and screaming. The little troop ran deeper, and finally, as they came out of the cave's tunnel, they found themselves in what appeared to be an old mining cavern. Wooden cages could be seen against the walls of this cavern, and inside were the civilians from the village, as well as other people that Ingrid didn't recognize. Some appeared Wulin or samurai in origin, based on their almond eyes and dark hair. All were wailing and screaming. Some looked sick, and there were more than a few corpses. But the corpses didn't look natural. There were stones all around, some growing out of the corpses. Green and red stones, gems that looked like draconite, Ruth hissed.
But Horikos has no presence here, Ingrid reasoned. Why would there be draconite?
Neither Ruth nor Temwah could answer that question, and they didn't need to. Within moments of their arrival, a figure could be seen walking among the cages, a figure that made Ingrid's blood run cold. Shirtless, with a Dane axe in hand, and a helmet covering his pale face. But she could not forget it.
Henrik! She cried.
Ruth couldn't stop her, and Ingrid ran out from their hiding place and bolted down to the middle of the cavern. Henrik turned to see her, and his eyes widened. Ingrid, how did you find this place?
What's going on here, Henrik? She demanded. Why are all these people here? Do you know who did this? And this draconite? What's all this draconite here?
Henrik didn't answer her, but just looked around, as if seeing if she came alone.
Answer me!
The scarab curse, Henrik answered.
What?
Ingrid, You remember what happened to our homeland because of that Medjai curse? We never felt anything like it. For so long I thought, I knew that no force could best Valkenheim. Not knight, not samurai, not Wulin. But now I know that these savages of Egypt can command curses like that. Our people bled and died, and we were powerless. We were at the mercy of foreign gods and magic, and we could do nothing to it. I'd never felt so useless, so vulnerable. But what does that have to do with... There could be worse than this. The Medjai is just one threat, Ingrid. And what about the other foreign enemies? What if there's even worse that they can do? Already, I've heard rumors of strange happenings in the mire. We can't be vulnerable like this again. Never again. So we should use what we have to fight back. If they will use foreign gods and magic, then we shall use the tools that Horkos discovered for us.
But Draconite is dangerous, Henrik. Unstable. The Jarls and High King forbid us to mine it or to use it like Horkos does, Ingrid argued.
Yes, which is why I keep trying to talk reason to them. And yet they again and again turn me away. Old fools, all of them. We need this. Draconite is a powerful weapon that can lay waste to whole countries.
Is that why these people are here? Ingrid asked, her grip tightening on her spear as she looked around.
Test subjects, he answered. I needed to see what the prolonged exposure to Draconite does to a human body. If I know what it can do, I will know how to better weaponize it. If Astria and her dogs of war could do it, why not Valkenheim?
Ingrid was beside herself. She took 3 steps back from Heinrich, the handsome and compassionate man she knew, barely even recognizable on the savage sneer he now wore, and yet he still held out his hand to her.
We must keep this secret, little bird. Why not help me? You keep saying you seek purpose, that you want to know how you can make a difference. Well, this is how. This is what you're meant to do. We can protect Valkenheim forever.
A voice sang in her head, a calling. Whether it was her own conscience, or perhaps the gods themselves speaking to her, Ingrid didn't know, but what she knew that this was wrong. That if she wanted to make a difference, she had to strike down Henrik. You've broken our laws, Ingrid snapped. You've endangered civilians. You've brought shame to the clan. Submit at once, or I will send you to your forefathers. Henrik glared her down and then raised his axe.
I didn't want to kill you, little bird, but I will.
He charged her with a ferocity that made Ingrid stagger. She lowered her shield to intercept the blow, and as she took the strike, she stabbed forward, pinning his thigh. Henrik roared through the pain and took another swing, this time knocking Ingrid backward as it hit her helmet. She rolled and jumped back to her feet, her head ringing. She charged and struck with her shield. Henrik blocked the blow, but then was forced to retreat back as she followed up with a downward spear strike. Henrik repaid her with a hack from his axe. The two traded blows and hits in vicious order, and with each strike a feeling was welling up in Ingrid. Pain, of course. Pain for having to fight someone she admired and respected, but also satisfaction. All these years slaying nameless knights and samurai for so meager things as territory, riches, or plunder. It all began to add up now. It was not about who you fought, but what you were fighting for. All these battles felt meaningless because they were meaningless. She did not bring honor to her family or to her clan by simply killing in the name of loot or gain. But here, in this cavern filled with sick, tainted, and frightened souls, fighting a madman who had lost all sense of reason, this fight would bring her honor. Again and again, the two launched themselves at each other, so frequently that Ingrid lost track of time. Both were beginning to tire, and her spear arm was getting weak. Henrik, too, looked worn out, but then his eyes looked past Ingrid to the cages to see that most were now empty, with Ruth and Temwah having used that distraction to again free civilians.
A Medjai! And a warden, he roared. The enemy is here! Ingrid, forget this and help me kill them!
But Ruth and Temwah looked at him, and then Ingrid expectantly. She shook her head. My enemy is you.
You traitor! Henrik roared.
He ran at Ingrid, who ducked the swing, and then swept at his leg. This time she connected, her spear taking Henrik off his feet. As he fell, she brought her spear down, impaling Henrik through his exposed chest. You're the traitor, Henrik, Ingrid whispered darkly, catching her breath, as her former comrade stared at the gushing blood that poured from the new hole in his chest. He stared up at Ingrid in disbelief. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but then his head fell back, blood pooling down his face as he breathed his last. With your death, I bring honor to the clan, to Valkenheim, and to my family.
Well fought, Temwah said with a nod as Ingrid stepped away from the body. You proved yourself quite a warrior.
I'm sorry you had to slay your comrade, Ruth added. As am I, Ingrid answered. I can't go back to the Wolffang clan now. I've killed our leader, and though he was a fool, he was still well liked. But he did terrible things to these people, Ruth argued. But none of them are Valkenheim citizens, Ingrid argued. These civilians would simply be considered prisoners of war, soon be made into slaves, and by killing my commander, I have brought shame to my clan in the eyes of the Jarl.
Then do you regret it?
Temwah asked. No. Though I will not be able to return to the clan, what I did was right, and that's what matters to me. Heaven smiles on the righteous, Ruth added. You know, if you have nowhere else to go, you might travel with us. My name still carries weight in Ashfeld, so none would hurt you, and perhaps we can find you work. The offer is kind, and I thank you. And perhaps sometime I will take you up on it, but first, I have business to attend to. I must settle things with my family and return Henrik's body to the lands of his fathers.
Temwah and Ruth looked to each other, and then Temwah approached slowly. It would bring us both honor if you would consider joining up with us, he said. We will be in these lands but a few days longer. If you should change your mind...
I will seek you out. I swear it, Ingrid replied with a bow of her head.
All things passed as Ingrid had foreseen. With the death of Henrik, she was forbidden to rejoin the Wolffang clan, and she was chastised and belittled by Valkenheim for her crime. However, because Henrik had been experimenting with Draconite, she was not executed or banished. Her family, though not fully understanding her course of action, still were grateful to her for her deeds. Ingrid returned to them for a time to see their well-being and to ensure no one gave them grief for what she did. When her affairs were in order, she completely vanished from Valkenheim. A Valkyrie without a clan to call her own? Some called that a wild spear, and yet to her it was not so wild or untrained. The Valkyrie fight to bring honor to those who cannot achieve it themselves. For so long, Ingrid believed that it merely meant killing others in battle to ensure that this honor is passed on, but she now believes better. Hers is a spear of heaven, aimed at the unrighteous, the unyielding, and the wicked. Some around Heathmoor have seen a Valkyrie adorned with an ornate spear and shield, traveling here and there, sometimes accompanied by a warden and a crocodile man, and sometimes by herself. None know why she goes where she does or what she seeks, but what is known is that where she goes, no man or woman she kills is without fault, for the spear of heaven is an unwavering judge.